Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to ice dye a king-size set of sheets. This is my first time doing any sheets, so it's going to be a little bit of an experiment. The sheets that I'm using are Hotel Signature Sateen sheets that are 400 thread count, Egyptian cotton, and I purchased these from Costco. And they happened to be on sale the day I purchased them, so I think they were about $50 for a set of sheets. And this set of sheets comes with the bottom sheet, top sheet, and then it comes with 4 king-size pillowcases. So since I've never done sheets before, I went ahead and pre-washed them using hot water and a little bit of professional textile detergent. Then while they were still damp, I decided to go ahead and tie them just in a random sinew design. The work table that I have is not large enough to spread the king-size sheets out, so I wasn't really comfortable trying to do a very complex design, especially since this is my first set of sheets. So to do the design, I'm starting with the fitted sheet and I'm just grabbing bits of fabric, kind of scrunching it up and tying a sinew line. Okay, so I'm finished with the bottom sheet and I'm going to go ahead and do the pillowcases and the top sheet. Once I finished tying the sheets, I placed them aside so that I could kind of try to figure out how to dye them. So by the time I came back to them, they were completely dry. I wanted to dye the sheets with dye over the top of the ice, and I didn't want to muck dye them. So I had a brilliant idea to take a tote that has tall sides, drill holes down in the bottom of the tub or tote, and then take that tote outside and place it on top of my metal shelving unit that I use when I gravity dye. I placed another tote down on the shelf underneath to catch all the runoff. Then I wanted to give a little bit of dimension. I was concerned because I was going to have to put all of these items down inside of the tote, that they would just kind of get packed in there together. So to try to avoid that, I added in some wiffle balls, both softball and baseball size, to try to space out the sheets a little bit. I placed the fitted sheet at the bottom of the container and then kind of sprinkled all of the pillowcases in around, and then I placed the top sheet up toward the top of this container. I knew the sheets were going to take a lot of ice, so I went ahead and started with what I had, and my husband was on his way to get more ice as I was applying this ice. So I started out by applying probably about 15 pounds of ice to the very top of this container. As you can see, I still have some fabric poking through. But I thought it would be good to go ahead and add a little bit of dye to the top before I add another layer of ice. I started by applying shiitake mushroom, charcoal gray, and brushed steel, which are all from Dharma Trading Company, randomly over the ice. Then I added a little bit of additional dry soda ash over the top as well. I've included a couple of photos of what this container looked like after adding the first layer of dye and ice. And I've done kind of a zoomed out version so you can see what my container looked like. Probably about 30 minutes after adding this first layer of ice and dye, I came back and added another 25 pounds of ice. So all total, I've added 40 pounds of ice to the top of these sheets. Then over the top of this layer of ice, I added Sleet Gray, Ashes to Ashes, and Black from Dharma Trading Company. And it just so happens these three colors are special order colors, which you can usually still get these out at Dharma, but you have to buy large quantities. Otherwise, you can purchase them from a Facebook group called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace. And I have a link to that Facebook group down below this video in the description. Then over the top of the dye, I'm going to add another additional sprinkle of dry soda ash. I mean, I've added 40 pounds of ice, so I want to make sure I have plenty of soda ash to react with the dye. Then I'm going to place the lid on this container and just leave it outside for the ice to melt. After the ice melted quite a ways, I noticed that I had just a few little white areas. So I came back and I added a little bit more dye. I added just a sprinkle of Ashes to Ashes in a couple of areas to see if I could get that dye to move on through the sheets. Then I put the lid back on this container and continued to leave it outside. Thankfully, this container has a lid because that evening we got a rainstorm and it rained pretty much all evening and half of the day the next day. But because I had a lid on the container, it didn't really matter. I just left them outside. They got really steamy and hot inside of that container. And I left the sheets for probably about 36 hours after all the ice melted before I started to rinse them. So to rinse the sheets, I took them to my utility sink and I began rinsing them in cold water to try to rinse out the soda ash. This is a king-size sheet set, so it's a lot of fabric. After rinsing for a while, I went ahead and just untied the sheets. Then I warmed the water up to hot and rinsed in hot water for a little while as well to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. So my utility sink has got two sides to it, and I decided with as much fabric as this is that I was going to soak the sheets, but I was going to go ahead and use both sides of my sink. So I ran some really hot water with a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap in one side of my sink, and after I'd rinsed this sheet in hot water for a little while, I put it over into the hot water soak to soak. Then I also put two of the pillowcases over in that side of the sink to soak after I had rinsed them in cold, untied them, and rinsed them in hot for a little while. I did the same thing with this side of the sink. I did the other large sheet as well as two of the other pillowcases. That way it kind of spread the fabric out into two sinks, gave the fabric a little bit of space to move around in the sink. And when the water cooled off in both sides of the sink, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process on these sheets until the water was remaining almost clear. Then I put all the sheets along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed them on a hot water cycle. Okay, so I didn't really know how to display these sheets other than to just put them on my bed. So that's what I did. I made up the bed with these king-size sheets and let's see what they look like. Okay, so here's the bottom sheet. And these were a little bit tough to photograph because, the bedroom's a little bit dark. I did set up lights to try to get better photographs of them, but you kind of get the gist. Then here's the top sheet, and I've placed the pillows on the bed, just 2 at a time, so that you can kind of see what those look like. And I think they're really pretty. I didn't quite know what color to make these sheets. Like I said, this is a whole new experience for me. So I thought I would do grays because if you're familiar with ice dyeing with grays, you get a variety of colors. And I thought that would be cool instead of just a single color. So I have all kinds of colors in these sheets. I have blues and teals, purples, pinks, some gray, kind of darker red colors. I just think they're really pretty sheets. Now, they're not as dark as I was expecting them to be. And I think that is because of the fabric. Like I said, I used a sateen fabric and I did pre-wash it, and I pre-washed it in textile detergent, but it still looks very muted. When I first took off the lid to the container before I started rinsing them, it was very dark down in there, almost kind of like a burgundy color. And then as I started rinsing them, they were still fairly dark. But once they went through the washing machine, they lightened up quite a bit. They're not quite as light as they look like in the photographs. Like I said, I really struggled to photograph these sheets. I photographed them at night, which didn't help. So I didn't have the sunlight coming in from the windows, so it was very dark in the room at the time. And I actually had to stand on a ladder to be able to get all the sheets in the shot. So they're a little bit darker than the photos show, but they're not as dark as if I would have just used like a regular 100% cotton fabric. These are 100% cotton, but they're also labeled as being sateen. The sateen, I actually looked it up, and it says that sateen is a fabric woven using a satin weave, but it's with spun yarn instead of filament yarn, which doesn't mean a whole lot to me. But they are super soft and I love them. So clearly I've claimed them as my own now because I haven't taken them off my bed. And for me, for a sheet set, I would rather have super soft than super dark colors. So I personally don't mind the fact that they're a little bit lighter. But if you happen to buy this sheet set at Costco, just kind of be aware that the colors are probably not going to be super dark. They'll still be pretty, but not super dark. So, like I said, I obviously really like the sheets, but what do you guys think about them? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.